Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're diving into something that could have a profound impact on millions of people across the country. President Trump's 2026 federal budget proposal. While this plan has been making headlines, many of the potential real-world effects are still flying under the radar. From education to healthcare to housing, this budget proposes some of the most significant spending cuts we've seen in decades, with some programs potentially disappearing entirely. And the new additions in the budget? They might surprise you. If you've ever wondered how life might change when the government dramatically shrinks its footprint, or if you're concerned about how this might affect your community, job, or finances, stick around. The details of this budget matter more than ever. Before we dive into the specifics, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever relied on federal programs like Section 8, student aid, or public health services? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you find this type of breakdown helpful for staying informed, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Let's start with the big picture. The proposed budget cuts $163 billion from what's called non-defense discretionary spending. That's a broad category, but essentially it includes most programs outside of Social Security and Medicare, things like education, housing, healthcare, science, the arts, and foreign aid. Nearly every federal agency, aside from defense, is facing some kind of cut. At the same time, there's a massive increase in military and immigration enforcement spending. The Pentagon would see a 13% boost, pushing the defense budget to a record-breaking $1 trillion. On top of that, $175 billion is being allocated toward border enforcement, including funding for the border wall, deportations, and detention facilities. Essentially, money is being shifted away from domestic services to bolster national defense and border control. Now let's talk about education. The Department of Education is facing a 15% reduction, which amounts to roughly $12 billion. This includes cuts to programs that support disadvantaged students. For example, TRIO and Gear Up, which help first-generation college students, would be eliminated. Federal work-study programs, funding for English learners, and adult education initiatives would also face significant cuts. While some funding for special education and Title I programs is being preserved, many of the surrounding support systems are being slashed. In addition, grants for disadvantaged K-12 schools would be wiped out. Instead, states would receive block grants. But critics argue that without federal oversight, these funds might not reach the communities that need them most. These education cuts don't just impact classrooms and textbooks. They ripple out into neighborhoods, affecting teacher staffing, after-school programs, and college readiness efforts. It's a major blow to schools already struggling to meet basic needs. What about other vital programs like the arts and scientific research? Those are also in the line of fire. The National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and the Institute of Museum and Library Services would be eliminated. That means libraries, small-town museums, and arts nonprofits, many of which run on minimal budgets, could be forced to shut down or scale back dramatically. The National Science Foundation would face a 56% cut, leading to the loss of whole areas of research, particularly in the social sciences. NASA would also see major cuts, with key programs like Artemis and the Orion capsule canceled in favor of private Mars missions. This shift may benefit companies like SpaceX, rather than serving the public good. When it comes to health, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention would lose half its budget, including the National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention, which funds vital programs targeting issues like diabetes, heart disease, and smoking cessation. These programs help keep people healthy before they end up in costly emergency rooms. The National Institutes of Health would also face an $18 billion cut, with several institutes being eliminated entirely. Notably, research related to gender identity and racial health disparities would no longer be funded, which has already sparked significant public health and ethical concerns. Environmental protection is also on the chopping block. The Environmental Protection Agency would experience a 54.5% cut, including the elimination of environmental justice grants and cleanup funds for polluted communities. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, would lose about a quarter of its funding, with key climate-related programs, including climate satellites, scaled back or cut entirely. While the administration argues these cuts are aimed at removing radical environmental alarmism, It also means we'd have less data to prepare for climate-related disasters. Next, let's talk housing. One of the biggest cuts in this budget is to federal rental assistance, over $26 billion in cuts. That includes major changes to Section 8 vouchers, which millions of low-income Americans use to pay rent. Under the new plan, states would have to create their own rental assistance systems, with support capped at 2 years for able-bodied adults. That might sound like a minor adjustment, but in practice, it could leave many families without a safety net once that time runs out. Affordable housing development programs would also be eliminated, along with community development block grants, money that supports local infrastructure, like parks and sidewalks, and boosts small businesses in underserved areas. It's not just housing that's being affected. Programs that assist the elderly and disabled, like heating and cooling assistance, are also on the chopping block. For many seniors, these programs are the difference between being safe during extreme weather and facing serious risks. These aren't flashy programs, but they quietly help people stay in their homes and maintain their health. Foreign aid is another area facing massive cuts. The State Department would see an 84% reduction in funding, meaning less money for humanitarian relief, educational exchanges like the Fulbright program, and economic assistance to developing countries. Critics argue that this signals a retreat from global leadership and could allow other countries like China to gain more influence in regions where the U.S. once had a dominant role. So why is all of this happening? Supporters of the budget argue that the goal is to reduce waste, curb ideological overreach, and tackle the national debt, which now exceeds $36 trillion. They believe we can't keep funding every program indefinitely, and that it's time for a more streamlined, security-focused government. But critics see this as more than just about the money. They argue that the proposed cuts reflect a shift in values, prioritizing defense and border control over public services, education, healthcare, and housing. Even some Republicans have voiced opposition to specific cuts, with lawmakers like Senator Susan Collins criticizing energy assistance cuts, Senator Roger Wicker pushing back on defense funding, and Mitch McConnell accusing the White House of using budget gimmicks. So, what does this all mean for you? If you work in public health, education, research, housing, or the arts, these cuts could directly affect your job, your funding, or your organization's ability to function. If you rely on rental assistance, student aid, or local health clinics, you may face more obstacles, longer waiting times, or even closures. Even if you don't use these services personally, these cuts could harm your community. Fewer after-school programs, less support for the elderly or disabled, and more neglected neighborhoods, which could lead to higher costs for local health care and increased homelessness. Remember, this is still a proposal. Congress has the final say, and negotiations are already underway. Even if only a portion of these cuts pass, it would represent a significant shift in how the government serves its citizens. It's not just about saving money, it's about determining what kind of support people can expect from their government. What do you think about this approach? Do you believe the government is doing too much or not enough? Are there cuts you actually agree with? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe and share this with someone who might be affected by these changes. The more informed we are, the better questions we can ask and decisions we can make. Thanks for spending this time with me. Take care, and I'll see you next time.